Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivra Jagacharya Astotera Stata Srimad, His Divine Grace Abhay Charnadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, BPT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivra Jagacharya Astotera Stata Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki, Namacharya Shvaharidas Thakur Ki, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki, Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Ganga Mai Ki, Jamuna Mai Ki, Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki, Hare Krishna Mahamantra ki, Grantarashna Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatamarandhyasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurue Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunathan Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopaka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishubhanushute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namaste Girirajaya Shri Govardhana Namane Nishesha Klesha Nashaya Paramananda Daine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mare Kabando Matsangin Madguru Manmadana Madvistaraka Madbhagya Marananda Namostite Asaru Saru Tadaya Natini Chochatakara Anamuncha Karachinmam Premna Ritkatayospara Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nastapreshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Mudmashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Hare Krishna. Today we'll be reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter number 28. Maharaj Paranjana becomes a woman in his next life. Text number 2. Taekadatu Rabasya Paranjana Purindripa Rudur Bama Bhogadyam Jarat Panagapalitam Taekadatu Rabasa Puranjana Purimnipa Rudur Bama Bhogadyam Jarat Panagapalitam Taekadatu Rabasa Puranjana Purimnipa Rudur Boma Bhogadyam Jarat Panagapalitam. Taekadatu Rabasa Puranjana Purim Nipa Gurudur Boma Bogadyam Jarat Panagapalitam Taekadatu Rabasa Puranjana Purim Nipa Gurudur Boma Bogadyam Jarat Panagapalitam Taekadatu Rabasa Puranjana Purim Nipa Gurudur Boma Bogadyam Jarat Panagapalitam Rabasa Puranjana Purim Nipa Gurudur Boma Bogadyam Jarat Panagapalitam Te Ekada Once upon a time Tu Then Puranjana Purim the city of Puranjana Nripa O king Ruduhu encircled Bhauma Bhoga Adyam full of sense enjoyment Jarat old Panaga by the serpent Palitam protected. Translation. Once the dangerous soldiers attacked the city of Puranjana with great force. Although the city was full of paraphernalia for sense gratification, it was being protected by the old serpent. Please repeat. Once the dangerous soldiers attacked the city of Puranjana. With great force. Although the city was full of paraphernalia for sense gratification. It was being protected by the old serpent. Purport. As one's body engages in sense gratification, it becomes weaker and weaker daily. Finally, the vital force becomes so weak that it is herein compared to a weak serpent. Life there has already been compared to the serpent. When the vital force within the body becomes weak, the body itself also becomes weak. At such a time, the death symptoms, that is, the dangerous soldiers of Death's superintendent, Yamaraj, begin to attack very severely. According to the Vedic system, before coming to such a stage, one should leave home and take sannyas to preach the message of God for the duration of life. However, if one sits at home and is served by his beloved wife and children, he certainly becomes weaker and weaker due to sense gratification. When death finally comes, one leaves the body devoid of spiritual assets. At the present time, even the oldest man in the family does not leave home, being attracted by wife, children, money, opulence, dwelling, etc. Thus, at the end of life, one worries about how his wife will be protected and how she will manage the great family responsibilities. In this way, a man usually thinks of his wife before death. According to Bhagavad Gita, Yam yam babismaran bhavam tyajat yante kalevaram tam tam maivati kaunteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. At the end of life, a person thinks of what he has done throughout his whole life. Thus he gets another body, Deyantara, according to his thoughts and desires at the end of life. One overly addicted to life at home naturally thinks of his beloved wife at the end of life. Consequently, in the next life, he gets the body of a woman, and he also acquires the results of his pious or impious activities. In this chapter, the acceptance of a woman's body by King Puranjana will be thoroughly explained. Namaste Jivananda Dasa Madacharine Prabhupada Balabhaya Sninasila Vinodine Agyana Dvanta Gamanam Pashtita Patitatmanam Gyana Gurute Chitarine Chakshashe Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadishatadane. What? Yes. So we can speak a little. Oh, it's lost the bookmark. Sorry. I found this old notebook. It has all my classes from early days of mine. Today I did my entire class with a feather pen. Okay, so death has come for King Paranjana. We've entered a new chapter, and we've entered a new section of Srimad Bhagavatam in the sense that now we're hearing about King Paranjana's death. And for, I think, 27 verses, maybe 17 verses, we're going to hear about how Paranjana is dying. And, he's had a good run. He's had a lot of enjoyment in the city of the 9 gates. And now we've heard about how Jara has attacked old age. And now Chandavega, all these different soldiers are attacking. His 260 soldiers. And now the time is coming for Paranjana to leave. And this old serpent, which represents the life heirs of Paranjana, is becoming very old and weak, and he's unable to protect the body anymore. So the first section of this chapter is going to be the death of Paranjana, and we're hearing about how he's becoming weak. So we've all heard the pastime of Maharaj Yudhisthira, how he came across the Yavana, or the Yaksha spirit, and the Yaksha spirit had basically killed or covered over all the other brothers of Yudhisthira, the Pandavas, and they were playing like a riddle game, right? What did the Yaksha ask him? You all know this. What did the Yaksha ask Yudhisthira Maharaj? What's the most amazing thing? What's the most amazing thing? And what did Yudhisthira reply?
Every day people are dying.
Yeah, he replied that the most amazing thing is that every day people are being sent to the kingdom of Yamaraj, but we don't realize it. We don't think that it's going to happen to me. So, right, that doesn't apply for us, right? We're devotees. We know it's going to happen. Right? We're devotees. We all know this, that we hear this stuff every day: birth, death, old age, and disease. But do we really actually realize that death is coming? If we had realized, if someone had given you a fatal cancer diagnosis, someone had said, you're going to die within 1 month, 1 week, what would you do? You would hear Bhagavatam and you would chant Hare Krishna, right? Or you would just melt down and take shelter of nonsense, take shelter of the fallible soldiers. So a real devotee, he's strong enough to realize, I will take shelter of Krishna. However, death is, like Prabhupada said famously, we have we don't know what we have. Paranjana Parikshit Maharaj had 7 days. We don't know if we have 7 minutes or 7 seconds. So there's a seriousness that should be developed in the progressive path of devotional service. Devotional service is very joyful. It's susukam kartamavyayam. It's very, very joyful. However, if we're not serious, if we don't become grave, which is a symptom of a devotee, we don't become privy to the perception of birth, death, old age, and disease, and understand the evil of it, and understand the seriousness of what we're doing, then when death comes, how do we know we're not going to take shelter of fallible soldiers? Because if we take shelter of them now, why won't we take shelter of them then? So we have to come to the point of taking full shelter of Krishna. We have to come to the point of taking full shelter of Krishna. This is the goal of our process. So we shouldn't be scared of death, and we shouldn't be scared that we're going to forget Krishna at the time of death, right? We're all thinking, I'm going to remember Krishna at the time of Krishna will give me mercy. I'll remember Krishna at the time of death. Right? I think that way. I hope I remember Krishna at the time of death. But we should also understand that if we don't put our work in, if we don't put the proper endeavor in, then how will we remember Krishna at the time of death? Just like that Mataji from Mayapur. She did devotional service her whole life. She preached in the Islamic countries and so many different powerful devotional services. And then she got very, very sick, and she was in Mayapur, and then they took her to Krishnanagar, to the hospital, and she was dying. And what was the only thing she can remember? Anybody remember that story? She couldn't think of anything. She knew she was supposed to remember something, but she just could remember mom. Mom, that's all she can remember was mom. And like Parameshwar said once, that in plane crashes, really, really, this is a freaky fact. But they have the black box, which records everything the pilots say before the plane crash. And the last words of the pilots is generally mom. That's rough. That's mom, Mama Maya Dharatya. Actually, it's not just mom, it's mom, big mom, Maya. We're taking shelter of mom in the form of wife, mom in the form of mom in the form of, all the material enjoyments, Mama Maya. So the last thing they remember is a bodily relationship. Now it's kind of like for some people, I've said that to some people, and they're like, well, that's really sweet, But for a devotee, we understand that this is a very serious matter. Not very sweet, because you have to take birth again if you remember mom. We should remember Krishna. So therefore, we should not be scared that we're going to forget Krishna, but we should be serious that we could forget Krishna. Therefore, we should beg the mercy of Krishna. We should be very serious. Don't take shelter of things that are nonsense. So Prabhupada, he is giving us a prescription of how to properly remember Krishna at the time of death if everything goes right. Prabhupada explains that the person who is practicing devotional service, who can't control his senses and become a brahmachari or become a renunciate, such a person should become married, go through the grihastha ashram, and then at a certain stage leave home and practice vanaprastha and then take sannyas, so that one is taking full shelter of Krishna. We have to engineer a position. We have to engineer a circumstance that we will remember Krishna at the time of death. This is what we're doing, this inner engineering, this engineering our consciousness so that when we become very sick, when we become very scared, when we become very hurt, when we become very debilitated, when death is knocking at our door, when Chandavega is starting to break the walls of our city, at that stage, we're engineering a time and a place and a state of mind where we can remember Krishna. Because we want to go back to Godhead, don't we? I don't want to go through puberty again. I don't want to go through any of this stuff again. I want to serve Krishna. And, devotee doesn't want to go back to Godhead to serve Krishna just to avoid the pain of living in the material world. He wants to go back to Godhead to see Krishna and to serve Krishna in a way that is not hindered by all these material encumbrances, like sleep, like, all kinds of challenging individuals. The service is unhindered. One just serves Krishna. If there is a challenging individual, Krishna handles them. Actually, we only hear about certain demons. Krishna killed a few demons before lunch every day. That was just a common thing in Krishna's. Kamsa was standing hundreds of demons, thousands of demons. Every day, Krishna would kill 3 demons before lunch. Can you imagine how fun that would be? You're just like, that's a demon. Swiper, stop swiping,
Swiper, stop swiping.
So it happens every episode,
I hope these are a little more challenging.
Not to Krishna. Not to Krishna. Krishna just takes them out. So we should be serious. And this is, we have the examples. We have examples of this leaving home. If we have to go through the grihastha ashram, then we should understand that it isn't a solution to any problems. Not a solution. It doesn't solve our problem of not being Krishna consciousness. All it does is solve our agitated mind, perhaps. Sometimes it agitates the mind more. But most of the time it probably does. But in any case, the mind becomes peaceful because, I heard Mahatma Prabhu say that one of the benefits of having a wife or husband is that you don't have to worry about having a wife or husband. So in that way, then, the mind can be some peacefulness. But anyhow, it doesn't solve our problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. It doesn't solve our problem of lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, and madness. It doesn't solve those problems. Those problems are solved by becoming a good devotee. So if we understand the proper Vedic varnashram, and we look at it, we say, okay, I'm not going to be a lifelong renunciate. Okay, we accept that. So what is the brahmacharya ashram at that point? It's a training ground. So if you don't train properly, then you're going to fail in the game, right? Therefore, we have to train properly. We're in the ashram space is training ground. So if you don't do your training right, then when you leave the training and the real Maya hits you, you're finished, man. That's why we train. The ashram space is a place for training. And we all can do it. We should understand we can all be Krishna conscious. We can all overcome Maya. Don't feel like, oh, Maya's trick. Balaram Prabhu was speaking of Maya's tricks. And this is actually coming from the Christian theology, but it's true it applies for Maya too. It's a Satan's trick in the Christian theology. But in the Christian, the Desert Fathers speak about this, but actually it applies for us too. One of Maya's tricks is to make you think that you can't be saved. You can't be delivered. You're separated from Krishna. And you're so bad that you can't overcome whatever you're doing. It's to make you feel weak. How does she do that? She traps you in your mind and your body, making you think that, oh, I've done all these things, I am all these things, and how could I possibly overcome them? This is her illusion. But we have to take shelter of Krishna. We have to have faith in the words of the spiritual master. Srila Prabhupada said, if you chant these 16 rounds every day and you follow four regulative principles and you follow my program, you will go back to Godhead in one lifetime. It is very easy, actually, but it really requires us to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada, meaning that we take this process very seriously. Take what's seriously. That means our rounds, our reading, and our program of service. If you do that seriously, you're guaranteed to go back to Godhead, and you can feel it. And we shouldn't have fear at that point, but we don't. We still should be serious. And there's examples. Srila Prabhupada left home. Prabhupada followed the process. He was raised in a very nice Vaishnava family, practicing principles of Krishna consciousness and worshiping the deity. Prabhupada worshipped his Radha Govinda deities. And then Prabhupada went to college and is described how Srila Prabhupada stopped worshiping his deities. And then his deities came to him in a dream. And they said, what's going on? Yeah. And so Srila Prabhupada began worshiping his deities again. I always wonder where those deities are. It'd be interesting to know. Yeah. It'd be amazing to see them. So Srila Prabhupada had his deities. He worshipped them. And then he became married, right? He had children. Prabhupada met his spiritual master in 1922, at the age of 25. And Prabhupada was immediately attracted to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, accepted him in his heart at that very moment. However, Prabhupada waited 11 years before he took initiation in 1933. And Srila Prabhupada, spoke with his spiritual master on a few occasions, and in each case, he was kind of instructed to go to the West and preach, although Srila Prabhupada was unable to due to family encumbrances. And Prabhupada had a plan that I'm going to make a lot of money, and then I'm going to be able to serve Krishna in this way. But that plan wasn't Krishna's plan, right? So, and Prabhupada was having dreams. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was coming to him in dreams and telling him to take sannyas. And if you read Mula Prakriti, Mataji's book, it gives you a lot of details and facts about Srila Prabhupada that we don't generally hear. Sometimes we think Srila Prabhupada, was a normal grihasta. And then he became, Prabhupada. Prabhupada was not a normal grihasta. Prabhupada was a pure devotee grihasta. Even then, Prabhupada was a fully self-realized soul. Not to think that Prabhupada was not a fully self-realized soul at that point. Prabhupada was an Nitya Siddha. He always was aware. And that's why I think this book is Krishna's special mercy, that our Srila Prabhupada friend to all. Because you get to hear how Prabhupada was speaking to people, even back in the 30s, in the 40s, about how he's going to go to the West and he's going to preach Krishna consciousness. There's one pastime where Bhakti Raksha Sridhar Maharaj explains how Srila Prabhupada wanted to take sannyas. He had a dream and he came to him and he said, I want to take sannyas. And Maharaj said, I don't know if that's a good idea right now. So Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada said I should take sannyas. Give me sannyas today. And Bhakti Raksha Sridhar Maharaj said, I don't think so. Wait some time. And so Prabhupada was very agitated by that dream. So there's more details we hear in these books because of Prabhupada's godbrothers being interviewed. And some of Prabhupada's younger godbrothers. There's one story about how one younger godbrother, Srila Prabhupada, who greatly respected Abai Babu because Abai was very advanced, even as a grihasta. He was seen by his younger god family as very, very advanced, very learned, very aristocratic, very gentlemanly with beautiful, perfect Vaishnava behavior. And so it's described how this younger godbrother would ask Srila Prabhupada, how is it this movement will spread all over the world? Srila Prabhupada said, some fool will do. And Prabhupada even said, someday I will do at different times, different stories you hear. There's one story about how Srila Prabhupada was affectionate with one of his younger godbrothers. And, he would give him medicines from his, pharmacy. And the younger devotee said, oh, bye, Prabhu, you're giving so many nice medicines, but you've not given me your real medicine of Krishna Prem, which I know you have. Prabhu said, I have not yet discovered the formula. I have not yet acquired. Then later on, Prabhupada said to him on another joking occasion, Prabhupada said, I have acquired the formula, but I have not yet acquired the medicine. He said, what is that formula? Trinada pisanichena, taro eva seshnina, amanena madanena, kirtaniya sadahari. One should chant the holy name in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street and becoming more tolerant than a tree. One should offer all respects to all living entities, not expecting any respect for oneself. In that state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. But Prabhupada was so much aware of his mission. And then Srila Prabhupada, at a certain point, did leave home, right? He became a Vanaprastha, and he was trying to do things, the League of Devotees. And then Prabhupada took sannyas from Keshava Maharaj, and he came to the West to save us and to give us this Krishna consciousness movement. And we also have the example of our spiritual master, most of our spiritual master, His Grace Jivananda Prabhu. We see that he was also grihasta for, I think, 33 years. He was a grihasta ashram. And by Kalachandji and Dallas's arrangement, he was forced to leave home. And rather than, getting remarried or trying to repair the situation at home, he took shelter of Krishna and in all sincerity began to preach Krishna consciousness. It's quite amazing because from everything I've heard from him, he had a very wonderful grihasta life, very wealthy, very affluent in terms of his business life, and always had Cadillacs and nice cars and stuff. But he had prayed to Kalachandji to help him to fulfill the desire of Srila Prabhupada and his Shiksha gurus, who had told him and expressed their desire to see him preach Krishna consciousness. And so at a certain point, Kalachandji made the arrangement that everything in his grihastha life fell apart. And actually, if you hear the story in depth, he was working for one of the biggest companies in the US in terms of like selling this big insurance, and that entire company collapsed. One of the biggest, it was like inconceivable how this company could collapse. So, he went to another company, the second biggest, and then that company collapsed. So Krishna collapsed like 3 massive companies.
They're like, no, we will not hire you.
Krishna killed, he wanted to collapse 3 companies, and then Gurudev was, becoming, or Jivananda Prabhu was becoming very disturbed. And then, naturally, when the flow of money and the flow of, strong maintenance in terms of money and so forth is diminished, then, family life starts to become shaky. And so eventually there was separation, and he just wanted to move into the Dallas temple. And then he was feeling, I don't want to become re-entrapped in any type of family entanglements. Therefore, he went with Keshava Bharati Swami to Govardhan and took up saffron cloth. And then from there, simply traveled around the U.S. to preach and spread the message of Bhagavad Gita. And in all sincerity, just by speaking Bhagavad Gita, people have become inspired, and so many people have become devotees. So this fulfilling the mission of Lord Chaitanya in that way. And the instructions of Srila Prabhupada that one should use all of the struggles and challenges Krishna sends us to take more shelter of Krishna. So once again, we have to engineer a condition by which we can feelingly call out to Krishna at the time of death. This is what our process is. It's the life's final test, is that moment when Chandavega comes. Are we going to take shelter of Krishna, or are we going to take shelter of fallible soldiers? Deha patya kalat pradish atma sanyashvasatsapi tesham pramato nidhanam pashyanapi na pashyati. Shukadev Goswami explains that those who are devoid of Atma Tattva, they take shelter of fallible soldiers, like family, children, wife, and body. And therefore, even though they see their inevitable destruction, they don't act. So this verse is explaining that we're all seeing our inevitable destruction, yet we're taking shelter of other things that are inevitably destroyed. And we're becoming bewildered. So why is it one becomes bewildered and they don't have the determination to really be Krishna conscious? What is it that bewilders them? Anybody know? The famous verse in Bhagavad Gita. Why is it someone doesn't become determined to go back to Godhead? Yeah, essentially. Bhogashvarya prashaktanam te parita chetasam vivasyatmika buddhi samadao navidiyate. In the minds of those who are too attached to material opulence and sense gratification and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination to perform devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So don't become bewildered by Maya's tricks. Maya's selling you trinkets, but we have Krishna. Last night I was hearing, Lita was listening to a little bit of the glories of the spiritual world of Goloka Vrindavan Dham and Shiva Maharaj's nice book I've been reading, describing how, glorious and beautiful is Goloka Vrindavan. If we decide to stay here and become attached to the grossest type of sense gratification, why should we become attached to? But we're not hearing properly, are we? If we heard about the glories of the spiritual world, we may want to go there. But if we don't hear about the glories of the spiritual world, we don't hear about Krishna, then how can we want to go? So it can seem like Maya's first trick, right? If we're hearing, I'm not hearing, I'm helpless, I'm weak, this is the way Maya gets in. However, the positive side of that is, no, you can go back to Godhead. You can make so much rapid advancement. In 30 days, if you for 30 days chant like the best japa of your life and read Prabhupada's books for an hour a day, watch yourself literally transform completely into a different person. And watch the peace come over you. It's so easy to be Krishna conscious if you surrender to Srila Prabhupada's process. Because we have to surrender at some point to Krishna in full. So there's nice examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I gave examples of Srila Prabhupada and our Jivananda Prabhu. Nice examples, but there's better examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam even that are, we're following, all those devotees are following the footsteps of. One of them is Dhritarashtra, right? The opposite side of that. So how many of you have heard of the story of Dhritarashtra and his circumstances, right? He didn't want to leave home. He was very much attached. So Dhritarashtra was a horrible person, right? Personality. The blind king. And so because of his attachment to his son Duryodhana, who Vidura affirms is offense personified, Your son is a fence personified. Vidura and him get in an argument. The whole story of Mahabharata, right? That the Pandavas were the rightful kings, and their father died because he was cursed, and he died in the forest on a hunting trip, naturally. And so the Pandavas were orphans, and the mother of the two Pandavas, Nakula and Sahadev, she went into the fire with Pandu, and Kunti Maharani, Prita, she remained to raise the children. So in the meantime, Dhritarashtra, the blind king, he became the steward of the kingship, the rulership of the world of Hastinapur. And so he had 100 sons, right? Headed by Duryodhana, who was very, very evil. Prabhupada said Duryodhana is Kali personified, actually, at one point. So Duryodhana was very evil. He wanted the throne. And so because of Dhritarashtra's attachment to Duryodhana, he made all kinds of decisions in opposition to the will of the personality of Godhead. Well, that's a bad move. So if we're attached to someone who's not Krishna conscious, then they force us to do things and to act in ways that offend the personality of Godhead, and then we can't make any progress in spiritual life. Therefore, it's recommended that one associate with devotees. And in that association, choose devotees who are factually in knowledge and can advance you in Krishna consciousness. So this went on. Duryodhana wanted to become the king. And so there were many plots and attempts to murder the Pandavas, right? The house of lac, and Bhishma was given a poison cake. That's a beautiful pastime, actually. He was given a poison cake, and then Padmanabhan Prabhu, he gets really excited when he starts telling pastimes. And he was saying, he said, this man, he'll go down to the hellish planets. And the snakes, all the Nagas, they came, and he was like, what's going on? So he picked up one of the Nagas and he started beating them with the other Nagas. And he said, who is this man? He's beating us with us. And so then they gave him a boon, right? That he would be stronger than 10,000 elephants, or not like a boon. There's some different circumstances that happen. I can't remember it all super clearly. But anyways, Bhima was granted great strength. So, they were so many attempts to murder the Pandavas. And in each case, Vidura protected them, right? Vidura was their protector and their well-wisher. And because Vidura was born of a Sudra mother, he couldn't actually be royalty, right? He was born of a Sudra mother. Although he was a great devotee. He was a great devotee of the Lord. And so at a certain point, Vidura, in an attempt to talk some sense into Dhritarashtra, he said, your son is a fence personified, and because he is adverse to the will of Krishna, and he's adverse to Krishna's devotees, he will be the ruination of your entire dynasty and you. And then Duryodhana heard this and then spoke up very insulting words to Vidura. And so Vidura, being hurt by these words, left, and it's described in the third canto that simultaneously the internal energy was working on Vidura, because Vidura left home completely, and the external energy was working on Duryodhana to engineer his destruction. So Vidura felt himself, although Vidura had already associated with Krishna and was an associate of Krishna, he felt himself completely contaminated by associating with Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana to approach Krishna. So therefore he went on pilgrimage. He went to bathe in all the holy places, and on the way, he just so happened to meet Uddhava, Krishna's closest associate, and Maitreya, who was just so happened to see Uddhava and Krishna speaking and become a pure devotee. So then now we're hearing how Vidura is hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then at a certain point, Uddhava returned after being enlightened by the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vidura returned to rescue Dhritarashtra, and I have some of those shlokas here. We'll read a little bit. Yeah. My dear king, Please get out of here immediately. Do not delay. Just see how fear has overtaken you. This is Vidura speaking to Dhritarashtra, because Dhritarashtra he survived the battle of Kurukshetra, and then after trying to kill his grandsons and so many, or his nephews, and so many things, now he's just living in their house, getting fed and getting fat. And so Vidura says some heavy words. This frightful situation cannot be remedied by any person in this material world. My Lord, it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is eternal time, that has approached us all. Whoever is under the influence of Supreme Kala must surrender his most dear life, and what to speak of other things, such as wealth, honor, children, land, and home. Your father, brother, well-wishers, and sons are all dead and passed away. You yourself expended the major portion of your life. Your body is now overtaken by invalidity, and you are living in another home, in the home of another. You have been blind from your very birth, and recently you have become hard of hearing. Your memory is shortened, and your intelligence is disturbed. Your teeth are loose, your liver is defected, and you are coughing up mucus. Alas, how powerful are the hopes of a living being to continue his life. Verily, you are living just like a household dog, and are eating remnants of food given by Bhima. Of course, Bhima tried to kill Bhima so many times. There is no need to live a degraded life and subsist on the charity of those whom you tried to kill by arson and poisoning. You also insulted their married wife and usurped their kingdom and wealth. Despite your unwillingness to die and your desire to live, even at the cost of honor and prestige, your miserly body will certainly dwindle and deteriorate like an old garment. What if your guru spoke to you that way, right? Really heavy. That's why Bhagavatam is there. He is called undisturbed, who goes to an unknown, remote place, freed from all obligations, quits his material body when it has become useless. He is certainly a first-class man who awakens and understands, either by himself or from others, the falsity and misery of this material world, and thus leaves home and depends fully on the personality of Godhead residing within his heart. Please, therefore, leave for the north immediately without letting your relatives know, for soon that time will approach, which will diminish the good qualities of men. Sounds pretty good, right? I mean, he's getting the mercy from Vidura, the pure devotee of the Lord, who's an incarnation of Yamaraj. But what happened to Vidura? Did Dhritarashtra go back to Godhead? He never went back to Godhead. He didn't become a devotee. So, even though he was associating with Vidura, even though we're associating with Srila Prabhupada and so many great souls, Dhritarashtra didn't go back to Godhead because he didn't take it seriously. So therefore, it's impelling us. The story is impelling us to take it very seriously. Vidura, however, right, he did leave home, right, by the arrangement of the Lord, because of the horrible circumstances that were occurring in Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana speaking so horribly of him. He left home, and so what was the result? He attained. So what was amazing is that Krishna left instructions for Vidura. Vidura was very dear to Krishna. Vidura was a serious Mahabhagavat, very, very dear to Krishna. And so Krishna, as he was leaving, there's a beautiful pastime of how Uddhava at once understood Krishna's leaving, and Uddhava was melting down, Uddhava's closest friend. Uddhava was melting down. He's crying. He's just begging Krishna, please let me come with you. Please, please let me come with you. I can't bear to breathe a moment in this world without your association. And Krishna was, basically very grave and looked away. And Uddhava fell at his feet, just weeping, please, Krishna, let me go with you. And Krishna said, no, I have services for you. I will speak instructions to you. Right, so Krishna spoke the Uddhava Gita. And then Krishna left instructions for Vidura to Uddhava. And then actually what happened, right, then, Samba, of course, he pretended to be pregnant, and then he was cursed by Narada Muni. And therefore the whole Yadu dynasty was annihilated. It's crazy amazing how Narada Muni, it's all play, Narada Muni cursed Krishna's son. Anyways, and then the whole Yadu dynasty was annihilated except for Krishna, Balaram, Uddhava, and Vrajnabha. And so, yeah, Uddhava understood, he actually was going north to follow Krishna's order, but he couldn't take it. He had to go back and see Krishna one last time. So he went to Prabhasa and he saw Krishna sitting under the banyan tree, the small banyan tree. Krishna was laying under the small banyan tree, beautiful with 4 arms and with an arrow in his foot. And then Uddhava took his last darshan of Krishna with tears in his eyes, and Krishna once again spoke transcendental knowledge to Uddhava. And Uddhava heard this transcendental knowledge, and Maitreya Muni, just by happenstance, who was an impersonalist, happened to be there and became a pure devotee. And Krishna once again left instructions for Vidura, and then Krishna quit his body. So many years later, the grandson of Krishna, and this is coming from Shiva Ramaraj's book, which is based on a lot of different books, but a lot of the Garga Samhita coming through. And Rajnabha Maharaj, Krishna's grandson, he was inquisitive to know what were Krishna's last thoughts as he exited the material world. And so Rajnabha came out. He was ruling Mathura because Dwarka was gone. And so he came out and he went to go on Parikram. He came from Mathura and he went to Govardhan. Right? And he noticed how everything was very sad. All the trees and plants and creepers, all the dust of Vrindavan was miserable state of mind and consciousness. And the water was seemingly jubilant. So then he spoke to the Jamuna personified, and she said, "Oh, actually, I understand Krishna is always with me. But if you want your questions answered, you have to chant, do kirtan." And so he began doing kirtan, and then these anthills came to life, and they were actually all the gopis that were left behind. And so the plan was they were going to find Uddhava, who could answer these questions, because Uddhava witnessed Krishna leave. And therefore, Uddhava had become a piece of grass in Vrindavan by his desire to be stepped on by the gopis. So they went to Ksum Sarovara, of which I'd been, and they began chanting Hare Krishna, and they did this kirtan with the gopis, and it's described how, this kirtan was like any other kirtan you can imagine. These gopis were chanting Hare Krishna, and, they were dancing and crying in ecstasy, and just so many ecstatic symptoms were happening. And then they saw the beautiful, effulgent, darkish blue Uddhava, who looks just like Krishna. He was standing there. And so he began to inquire from Uddhava, what were Krishna's last thoughts? What were Krishna's last words as he left this material world? And Uddhava explained that Krishna's last action was to leave instructions for Vidura. So Krishna was thinking of Vidura as he left this world. And so when Vidura heard this, he was, just totally moved and melted in his heart. And so then Vrajnabha, last bit of the story, Vrajnabha was very, very disturbed. And he said, how is it that Krishna was thinking of Vidura, even though Vidura is a great devotee, yet he arranged for his liberation, yet these gopis are still here suffering, and they've not gone back to Godhead? How is it that Krishna can remember Vidura, but not the gopis? And Uddhava replied, he said to Rajnabha, he said that the gopis will be liberated the same way that Vidura was, by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So Uddhava then spoke Srimad Bhagavatam to the gopis, and all of the pastimes manifested as he was speaking them. The rasa dance all manifested right there, because the gopis were so shro, they were so eager to hear. They were so excited to hear, and Uddhava was so ecstatic to speak. And so then they went back to Godhead. So therefore, take it seriously, chant Hare Krishna, read Srimad Bhagavatam. You'll be happier anyways. So why let Maya get in your way when you'll be happier if you become serious as a devotee? It's easy. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Any questions? Haribol, prasadam time.